Reports suggest the past few weeks have tested the royal family in ways most of us can't imagine. Keeping secrets, staying silent, it's been anything but easy. The clock hit 12. Buckingham Palace felt different that night. London sensed it too. Each bell that rang seemed to carry a message, a warning that something was shifting. The heavy curtains moved slightly in the breeze. Old paintings of past kings and queens hung on the walls, almost like they were watching, waiting. People gathered outside the palace gates. Candles flickered in their hands. They didn't know why they came. They just felt something was about to change. The air felt thick, heavy, like the moment before thunder breaks. And then it arrived, a statement, simple, short, no grand ceremony, no announcement from the balcony, just words on paper sent out into the darkness. But those words carried enormous weight. Across Britain, phones lit up. News editors stopped what they were doing. Advisors were called urgently. And inside the palace, in a room lit only by a blue fireplace, Prince Louis sat perfectly still. His small hands rested together. His eyes caught the firelight, and somehow he looked older than his years. The statement revealed what only a few trusted people had known. For years, Prince Louis had been carefully watched, his health monitored quietly, privately, and now the future everyone assumed was his would have to change completely. Roles would shift, old traditions would bend, expectations would crack, but the statement didn't explain everything. It didn't name any condition, it didn't give clear reasons, it left everyone asking the same haunting question: what could possibly force a royal prince's destiny to change overnight?
Before the rumors started, before the official statement shocked the nation, before London held its breath in fear, there was just a child, a little boy whose laugh filled palace halls with joy no one could predict or control.
Prince Louis didn't arrive in this world as a symbol or an icon. He came the way every baby does, small, curious, unaware of the legends others would build around him. In his early years, he became something unexpected, pure joy inside a family known for being serious and formal. People loved him instantly, his playful faces during public events, the way he waved with both hands like he was greeting friends, not strangers. These moments became treasures shared around the globe. He was the prince who made funny faces, who laughed when airplanes flew overhead during important ceremonies, who pulled on his mother's hand when speeches went too long. The boy behind all the pageantry didn't understand yet that he was part of something historic. He just loved the music, the uniforms, the excitement that came whenever his family appeared together. But life inside palace walls is never quite what it seems from the outside. In the private rooms where the children lived, Louis showed a different side, quieter, slower, more thoughtful. While other royal children from past generations were trained early to handle public duty, Louis was drawn to something else entirely, the library. He would sit cross-legged on thick, fancy carpets surrounded by books about ancient kingdoms, explorers, and lost empires. His teachers often discovered him gently touching old illustrations, tracing the edges with his fingers as if he felt connected to the past more than to the cameras and crowds of the present. Still, ceremony is something every royal child must learn. And though Louis tried his best, something subtle always remained beneath the surface. After big events, when the cameras were packed away and the fancy clothes hung back up, he grew tired faster than his siblings. His energy so bright during playtime seemed to drain away after long public appearances or crowded ceremonies. His parents noticed first, not with panic, but with the quiet understanding only parents have. Some days he ran through palace halls like he was filled with sunlight. Other days he withdrew, resting his head against the cool stone window frames, staring out at the gardens. The doctors assigned to watch over the royal family saw the same thing. They kept their notes private, their language gentle. They never used scary words, just phrases like heightened sensitivity and unique responses. He wasn't sick, he wasn't weak, he was simply different. And in a palace, being different raises both curiosity and concern. Louis began to notice the gap between who he really was and who the world expected him to be. During balcony appearances, he felt the warmth of the cheering crowds, but he also felt the pressure of standing completely still under thousands of watching eyes. He loved the laughter, the music, the excitement, but afterward he often slipped away to sit alone in the garden, letting the wind calm the overwhelming feelings rushing through him. The palace staff grew quietly protective. They adjusted schedules so he could rest between lessons. They made sure public appearances stayed short and manageable. His siblings, even though they were young, learned to sense when he needed space. They became both his playmates and his protectors, helping him navigate traditions he didn't always fit into naturally. Yet despite all the quiet adjustments, one truth remained unspoken. The destiny tradition expected of him might ask more than he could comfortably give. Childhood for Louis became a balancing act. On one side, the world saw him as a charming symbol of modern royalty. On the other side, hidden from view, he was simply a thoughtful, gentle boy who preferred stories to ceremonies and quiet to grandeur. He lived in the spotlight, but belonged naturally to the shadows. Not darkness, but calm, protective quiet where he could simply breathe. No one could have known back then that these small details, these gentle changes, would one day become the foundation of a decision that would shift the entire monarchy's direction. Childhood wasn't the tragedy. Childhood was the clue, the whisper of a fate quietly breaking away from the one carved for him at birth. And as London would eventually learn, the boy behind the balcony was never meant for center stage. He was meant for something entirely different. Growing up happens quietly in most homes. A child gets taller, their voice changes. A new seriousness settles in. But in Buckingham Palace, growing up doesn't slip by unnoticed. It's planned, prepared for, documented, it's monitored by teachers, anticipated by advisors, shaped by centuries of tradition and expectation. For Prince Louis, this shift began with a new schedule. Lessons on diplomacy, sessions on etiquette, light practice for ceremonies, gentle introductions to history and government, nothing too demanding, nothing too heavy. These were the first steps toward a life tradition insisted every royal child must be ready for. Louis approached these lessons the way he approached most things, with honesty, curiosity, and quiet determination beyond his years. His teachers often left sessions impressed. He understood abstract ideas quickly. He naturally grasped the emotions behind diplomacy. He listened deeply when others spoke. Sharp mind, one advisor wrote in a private note. Deeply thoughtful, another added. But beneath the praise, an unspoken truth lingered. The prince's ability to handle long public duties stayed much lower than expected. The first signs appeared during practice events. Louis would enter the room calm and attentive. He'd offer a polite nod or carefully practiced greeting. But as minutes passed, as conversations deepened, as multiple voices overlapped, a subtle exhaustion appeared on his face. After each session, he needed longer breaks than planned. His focus faded not from lack of interest, but from a wave of overwhelming sensations rising too fast. Doctors, still cautious in private, reviewed their earlier notes. Patterns reappeared. His heightened sensitivity to noise, crowds, extended formality, nothing alarming. Just a boy whose mind and body responded differently from those before him. They recommended reducing intensity, spacing out sessions, ensuring proper rest time. But tradition, even when softened by modern thinking, resists bending. Every child must be prepared equally, some senior palace officials reminded everyone. Duty cannot depend on flexibility, others insisted. And so the first crack appeared, thin, almost invisible, but real, a crack between heritage and humanity. Louis tried his best to close that gap. He perfected the diplomatic greetings. He memorized royal lineages with ease. He learned the rhythm of formal dinners, the choreography of walking beside officials, the measured pace expected of a young prince. But the toll revealed itself slowly, like a tide creeping further up the shore each week. After long lessons, he would retreat to the garden with a book pressed against his chest, letting the cool air restore what the day had taken. On training days that involved practice ceremonies, he sometimes asked his teachers for one quiet minute before they began. A simple request, but one that spoke volumes. It wasn't unwillingness, it wasn't rebellion. It was limitation, wrapped in honest effort. His advisors admired his resilience. They also worried. A prince doesn't need to be invincible, but he does need to endure certain public burdens. And endurance was exactly what Louis struggled to show in the traditional sense. One autumn afternoon, during practice for a future public walkabout, the truth showed itself more clearly. Louis completed the exercise. He smiled politely. He greeted staff members acting as citizens. But the moment the session ended, he let out a long, trembling breath. His shoulders dropped as if he'd been carrying something twice his size. His doctor approached the senior household committee soon after. He has the intelligence, the doctor said gently. He has the empathy, but sustained ceremonial exposure, it drains him significantly. We must consider a different path of preparation. Reports suggest this was a turning point, a different path, two words that echoed through the palace like a distant bell. Some embraced the idea quietly, cautiously. They saw in Louis not a flaw, but a new kind of prince. Others resisted politely but firmly, fearing that breaking from tradition would signal weakness to the world. The debate didn't explode. It simmered, polite enough to stay hidden, powerful enough to reshape everything that followed. Louis sensed it. He noticed the way adults paused when talking about his future. He noticed whispered conversations that stopped suddenly when he walked into a room. He noticed the slightly too enthusiastic encouragements, the kind meant to reassure him, but which only made him wonder what needed reassuring. Still, he didn't give up. He kept going. He attended every training. He gave every lesson his full attention. He gave everything he had because effort was something he could control. Destiny was not. Sources indicate that the rise of Prince Louis wasn't built on achievements or triumphs. It was built on pressure, quiet, constant, relentless pressure to endure what others had endured. Pressure to embody a legacy designed for a different kind of child in a different kind of century. Pressure to become someone the world expected rather than someone he naturally was. And yet, somewhere beneath that growing weight, a truth was waiting to surface. Sometimes a rising tide doesn't lift a person upward. It pushes them sideways toward a shore no one saw coming. The rise for Louis wasn't an ascent. It was the slow, inevitable realization that he'd been climbing a staircase never meant for his feet. By the time Prince Louis entered his preteen years, the world had already claimed him as one of its favorite small wonders of modern royalty. His appearances, rare, brief, often unplanned, carried a charm that cut through the stiffness of official ceremonies. A single wave, a mischievous grin, a whispered joke to his siblings on the balcony. These moments could overshadow the formality of royal protocol and send social media buzzing with affection.
He had a gift, an innocence that softened the grandeur around him, a spontaneity that made centuries of monarchy feel unexpectedly human. Whenever he appeared, cameras brightened, crowds leaned in, headlines bloomed with warmth.
But fame, even gentle fame, has its shadows. Every appearance that delighted the public came at a hidden cost. What the world saw was a boy waving enthusiastically during a parade. What the palace saw was what came after a slow walk back to the private wing. Shoulders heavy, cheeks drained, a silence settling over him like a thin veil. After large events, analysts believe it sometimes took hours for Louis to recover his usual energy, sometimes days. The palace medical team kept detailed notes. Their observations were always phrased carefully. Extended overstimulation, post-engagement fatigue, delayed recovery period, nothing alarming, but undeniably real and undeniably incompatible with the traditional path expected of a young prince. The palace staff began quietly adjusting protocols. Appearances became shorter, schedules became lighter. Public placements were arranged carefully so that his siblings Princess Charlotte and Prince George naturally stepped forward to handle the more demanding moments. Charlotte, graceful and instinctively tuned into her brother, often moved closer during walkabouts, picking up conversations before Louis felt overwhelmed. George, earnest and protective, learned to guide their trio's pace, positioning himself between Louis and the crowds without making it obvious. To the public, these simply looked like sweet sibling moments. Inside Buckingham, they were subtle acts of protection. But palace life is a machine powered by tradition, and tradition doesn't easily accept quiet rearrangements. As Louis's pattern became clearer, conversations began behind heavy oak doors. Not whispered gossip, but structured meetings conducted with the seriousness of constitutional matters. In the legal council wing, advisors debated precedent.